She was holding yellow tulips. That was the detail she remembered most. Yellow tulips for the man she was going to marry in 3 weeks. She let herself into his parents' house through the side door, the way she always did. She was early. She wanted to make a good impression. She always wanted to make a good impression. She was halfway down the hallway when she heard his voice behind the closed study door. Low, urgent, not the voice he used with her. She stopped. She did not mean to listen.
Don't hang up, Nora, please listen
But
to
then
me.
she heard the word that changed everything. Baby. Not her baby. Not their baby. Another woman's baby. She stood in that hallway with yellow tulips in her hand, and she heard the man she loved explain to his mother exactly how he planned to keep his pregnant wife a secret long enough to marry someone else. She did not move. She did not breathe. She just stood there while the tulips fell from her hand, one by one onto the floor. And in that moment, everything she thought she knew about her life, her future, and the man she trusted completely, collapsed. But here is what she did not know yet. The wife already knew about her, and the two of them were about to become each other's greatest ally. Lesson statement. This is a story about what happens when a man builds his life on the silence of women who were never going to stay silent forever. If this story already has you holding your breath, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Stay with us. This one goes places you will not expect. And if you have ever trusted someone completely and discovered you were seeing only the half they chose to show you, this story is for you. Hit the like button if you are already feeling something. Leave a comment and tell us, did you see it coming? Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And share it with someone who needs to hear it today. We are just getting started.
The floorboard creaked. That was the first thing. A single creak beneath her left foot, in the hallway of a house she had walked through dozens of times. She stopped, shifted her weight. The sound died. Down the hall, behind the closed study door, a voice kept talking. Garrett's voice. Nora Callahan stood perfectly still in the hallway of her future in-laws' home and listened without meaning to. She had arrived 30 minutes early. She did this sometimes, brought flowers, tried too hard, had always tried too hard with Diane Whitfield, who smiled at her, the way you smile at a draft coming under a door. Tolerant, patient. Waiting for it to stop, the side door was unlocked, the way it always was on Sunday afternoons. Garrett had told her, years ago, to just let herself in. You are practically family already, he had said. She had held that word, family, like a warm stone in her palm. The flowers were tulips, yellow, Garrett's favorite. She was halfway down the hallway toward the kitchen when she heard it, his voice behind the study door, low, urgent. Not the warm, easy Garrett she knew, the other one, the efficient one, the voice he used on the phone when he did not know she was listening. She should have kept walking. She knew that later. She should have made noise, announced herself, walked straight to the kitchen, and put the tulips in water and waited. She did not keep walking. She stood in the hallway with yellow tulips in her hand, and she listened. She cannot know about the baby, Mom. Not yet. Not until after the ceremony. Once Nora and I are legally married, I can manage both situations. Claire has already agreed to stay quiet. The tulips went still in Nora's hand. Garrett, this is getting complicated, said Diane, not alarmed, conversational, the way she talked about traffic or a delayed flight. It is fine. Claire knows what our arrangement is. The baby complicates the timeline, but it does not change the plan. Frank Whitfield said something low and indistinct. Garrett cut him off. Dad, I have handled this. I just need everyone to hold steady for 3 more weeks. Diane again. She will be fine once the baby arrives. She just needs more time. Nora did not move. She stood in the hallway and replayed the sounds. Rearranged the words, looked for another meaning. There had to be another meaning. There was always another meaning when you loved someone. Claire, the baby, our arrangement. She checked her phone, locked it, unlocked it, locked it again, unlocked it, stared at the screen, locked it. She did not call anyone. The tulips fell from her hand one at a time. She did not notice until they were all on the floor. Yellow petals against the dark wood. She looked at them. She picked them up. Every single one. She gathered them carefully, the way you gather something precious, though she could not have explained why. Then she walked back down the hallway. Slowly, one foot in front of the other, past the family photos on the wall, past the side table with the ceramic bowl for keys. She let herself out the side door. She got into her car. She put the tulips on the passenger seat. She did not start the engine. She sat in the driveway of the Whitfield home for 22 minutes. She knew the exact number later because she checked the timestamps on her phone. 22 minutes of sitting with the engine off in the September afternoon light, while the tulips lay on the seat beside her, and the word arrangement moved through her mind like something with weight. Arrangement. Not affair, not mistake, not I fell in love, and I am sorry. Arrangement. That was a word for something planned, something agreed upon, something that had been in place for long enough to require management. She pulled out of the driveway without going back inside. She did not text Garrett to say she had come and gone. Halfway home, she stopped at a red light and looked at her left hand on the steering wheel. The engagement ring caught the afternoon sun. It was a beautiful ring. She had chosen the setting herself. She had thought he was being romantic, letting her pick. She had told everyone that story, how he had taken her to 3 different jewelers and said, "Whatever you love most, that is what we get." She had cried telling that story at her cousin's dinner table. She understood now what it meant for a man managing 2 households to let a woman choose her own ring. He could not afford to guess wrong on ring sizes. The light turned green. She drove home. Her apartment was quiet, the way apartments are quiet when you have been looking forward to leaving them. She was supposed to be at the Whitfield house right now. Sunday dinner, Diane's pot roast, Frank's careful efforts at conversation. She was supposed to be sitting at that table being practical and pleasant and grateful. She sat on the kitchen floor instead, not at the table, not on the couch, the floor, her back against the lower cabinets, her knees pulled up, the engagement ring catching the kitchen light with every small movement of her hand. She pressed her hand flat against the cold tile, felt the ring dig into her finger, left it there. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Garrett? She watched it ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Voicemail. He called again immediately. She watched that too. The 3rd call she sent to voicemail before it rang. She sat on the kitchen floor and she thought, I am 3 weeks from my wedding and my fiancé has a pregnant wife. She thought it in those exact words. She did not soften it or find gentler language for it. She thought it plainly and completely and let it sit in the room with her. The kitchen was very bright. She had always loved the kitchen light in this apartment. East-facing window, good light until noon. She had told Garrett that when she first showed him the place. He had said, "Yes, it is bright. We should keep that in mind for when you move in with me." They had never quite arranged that move. There was always a reason to wait a little longer, another reason she understood differently now. She looked at the ring. I was so proud of that ring, she thought. I showed everyone. I held my hand out at every dinner, every brunch, every work event. I was so proud. She pressed the ring harder into her finger. Then she reached down and slid it off. Not dramatically. No throwing it. No walking to the sink to wash her hands of it. She just slid it off her left hand, and set it on the kitchen tile beside her, and the two of them sat there, together, in the good light, the ring and Nora Callahan, and neither of them moved for a long time. At 9:10, she picked up her phone and called Becca. Becca Harmon answered on the second ring, groggy and slightly alarmed, because Nora did not call after 9 on Sundays. This was a known fact between them. "Nora, what's wrong?" Nora's voice was steady. She was surprised by how steady it was. "He is married," she said. "He has been married the whole time, and his wife is 7 months pregnant." 4 seconds of silence. Then Becca said, "I am putting on coffee. Come over right now." Becca's apartment smelled like old coffee, and the particular candle she burned when she was anxious. Something with cedar and something sweeter underneath. She wrapped Nora in a blanket the moment she walked through the door. It was August, and the night was warm, and the blanket was unnecessary, and Nora pulled it around herself anyway. They sat across from each other at Becca's small kitchen table, and Becca poured coffee she had not actually finished brewing, and said nothing for the first 3 minutes while Nora talked. This was why Nora had kept Becca Harmon in her life for 11 years. She knew when to be quiet. Nora said everything: the side door, the hallway, the voice behind the study door, the tulips on the floor, the 22 minutes in the driveway, the ring on the kitchen tile. She said all of it, the way you empty a bag you have been carrying quickly, without stopping to examine each item. When she finished, Becca set down her mug. "Honey," she said, "I have been biting my tongue for 3 years." Nora looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I had a feeling. Not about this. I never imagined this. But there was always something. The weekends, the way he would go quiet when his phone lit up, the way he never—" Becca paused. "Nora, he never introduced you to a single friend of his. Did you ever notice that? His college friends, his work colleagues. Not one?" Nora stared at the table. She had noticed. She had made excuses for it. He was private. He was an introvert. He preferred their world to be small and contained. She had liked that about him. She had called it intimacy. She had thought they were building something rare, a world of two, uncomplicated by the noise of other people. He was protecting his other life from his other life. "I thought it meant he valued what we had," Nora said. "I know you did," Becca said, quietly, without judgment. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed, with its music too loud, and then faded. Nora picked up her phone. She opened the browser. She typed the name she had heard through the door. Claire Whitfield, Facebook, LinkedIn, a community newsletter from a suburb called Garden View, 40 miles east. A woman with dark hair and a warm smile, photographed at a neighborhood fundraiser 2 years ago, standing beside a man whose hand rested at the small of her back. The man was turned slightly away from the camera, but the shoulder, the particular curve of it, the way it angled toward her, Nora knew that shoulder. She clicked through every photo on the page without speaking. Becca came around the table and stood behind her, and they looked together in silence. Claire Whitfield at a block party, at a Christmas market, at what appeared to be a housewarming. New house, new kitchen, granite counters still with the manufacturer stickers on. And there in the background, blurred but unmistakable, Garrett Whitfield carrying a box and looking entirely at home. He has a house, Nora thought. He has a neighborhood newsletter. He has a life I was never supposed to know about. She searched the county records database. It took 4 minutes to find. Garrett Allen Whitfield and Claire Marie Donovan. Married 4 years ago, 2 years before he met Nora. 14 months before he proposed to Nora at the restaurant she had pointed out 6 times, the one she had always wanted to go to, the one he had remembered, and she had been so moved that he remembered. She had cried at that proposal, happy tears. She had been crying the happy tears of a woman who was already, legally, the other woman. She had told the proposal story at every dinner party for a year. The ring came off at 3:17 in the morning. That was the time on the phone when she finally set it on Becca's kitchen table and looked at it and said, "He proposed to me while he was already married to someone else." "Yes," said Becca. "He is not my fiancé. He never could have been my fiancé. The whole thing is—" "Yes," said Becca again. "I was dating a married man. I was engaged to a married man. My entire relationship is built on a crime." Becca refilled her coffee. She did not offer empty comfort. She did not say it will be okay, or you could not have known. She just refilled the coffee and sat back down and let Nora have the truth of it without softening the edges. That was a gift, though Nora could not feel it as one yet. At 4 in the morning, Nora said, "I need to find her." The wife. "Yes. She is 7 months pregnant. Becca, she is about to have his baby. She does not know about me. She needs to know." Becca was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure that is what you want to do?" "I am not doing it for me," Nora said. "I am doing it because someone should have done it for me." Becca drove her home at sunrise. They sat in the car outside Nora's building in the early morning light, and Becca said, "What are you going to do first?" Nora looked at her building, the east-facing windows, the good morning light she had loved so much. "Sleep," she said. "Then find her." She got out of the car, stood on the sidewalk, looked back through the window at Becca, who was watching her with the expression of a person who loves someone and cannot do the hard part for them. "Becca," she said. "Yeah, I know what I heard. I know what I found." She said it quietly, flat and certain. "I am not crazy, and I am not wrong." "No," Becca said. "You are absolutely not." Nora went inside. She did not sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and the ring in the center of the table, and she made a list. She had always made lists when she did not know what to do next. Practical Nora. Organized Nora. The woman who color-coded her calendar and kept a running grocery list on her phone and had not missed a dentist appointment in 12 years. The list had one column, what I know. She wrote everything down. By 5:30 in the morning, the list covered 2 pages. At 6, she closed the laptop. She looked at the ring, then she looked at the wall above the table, where she had hung a print she bought at a market 3 years ago. A simple thing, a single line of trees in winter, bare branches, gray sky. She had bought it because it felt quiet, and she had thought it would be nice to look at in the mornings. She had shown it to Garrett, and he had said, "It is a little bleak for a kitchen." She had kept it anyway. She looked at it now. The bare branches, the gray sky. She thought, I should have paid more attention to what I kept anyway. She went to bed at 6:15. She lay in the dark, with her eyes open for an hour. Then, somewhere around 7 in the morning, on the first day of her new life, she fell asleep. She drove to Garden View on a Tuesday morning. She had taken a personal day from work for the first time in 2 years. She told her manager she had a family matter. This was technically true. The drive took 47 minutes. She had the address from the county records, a street name she had never heard of in a suburb she had never visited. She drove through neighborhoods that looked like every neighborhood in a certain radius of the city. Ranch houses, mature trees, the particular Saturday morning tidiness of streets where people had lived for a long time. She found the house. Wraparound porch, window boxes, a car in the driveway with a yellow bumper sticker she could not quite read from the street. She parked across from it and turned off the engine and sat. This was the house Garrett had come home to for 4 years. This was the street he knew. These were the neighbors who waved at him. This was the kitchen where his coffee was made, and the bedroom where his suits were hung, and the porch where he sat in the evenings when he told Nora he was traveling for work. She looked at the window boxes. Someone had planted marigolds. They were very orange in the late summer light. She sat in the car for 40 minutes. At 41 minutes, she got out. She walked up the front path. The morning was warm and still. A bird was making a sound in the oak tree at the property line. She climbed the porch steps. She knocked. The woman who answered the door was not who she expected. She had been bracing herself for the Facebook photos. The warm smile, the dark hair freshly done. She had prepared herself, in some part of her mind she was not proud of, for someone to compare herself to. The woman who opened the door was 7 months pregnant, wrapped in a soft gray cardigan, her hair unwashed, her eyes swollen, in the way that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with weeks of sustained grief. She looked at Nora. "You are Nora," she said. Not a question. Nora's prepared speech dissolved entirely. You know my name. I found your name in his email 3 weeks ago." Claire stepped back from the door. Not an invitation. A collapse. She simply could not hold herself upright and manage the door at the same time. "I have been waiting for you to come." This was the moment the story changed. Nora had come to deliver information. She had come as the messenger, the one who knew, the one extending mercy to a woman who did not yet have the full picture. She walked into Claire Whitfield's house and understood within 60 seconds that Claire Whitfield had been doing the same research she had for 3 weeks longer. The kitchen table told the story. Bank statements, hotel receipts, a printed email thread with certain lines highlighted in yellow. A second phone in a clear plastic bag. A spreadsheet that had clearly been built by someone who worked with numbers for a living and brought that precision to the business of being betrayed. Claire had a folder. It was sitting open on the table between them when they sat down across from each other for the first time. 2 women destroyed by the same man on the same gray Tuesday morning in a kitchen with orange marigolds in the window boxes. "How long have you been collecting this?" Nora said. 3 weeks, said Claire. "Since I found your name, I needed to understand the scope of it before I did anything." Claire worked in finance. Nora learned this later, but she could have guessed it from the folder alone. Everything was time-stamped, cross-referenced, color-coded. The deception laid out with the same methodical precision you would use to document a financial discrepancy. The contents of the folder revealed something Nora had not known and Claire had only recently confirmed. Garrett had been diverting money from their joint investment account for nearly 2 years. Claire's contributions to that account were equal to his. The diverted funds had paid for 3 specific things that Nora recognized immediately. Her engagement ring, the anniversary trip to Portugal they had taken the previous spring, half the deposit on Garrett's apartment, the one Nora had believed was entirely his. She had been bought with another woman's money. She had gone to Portugal with another woman's savings. He had proposed to her with another woman's ring. Nora sat with this information for a long moment. She looked at the table, at her own hands on the table. She was not wearing the ring. She had not worn it since the night she slid it off on her kitchen floor. She had left it in a small dish by her front door, the way you leave keys when you are not sure you will need them. She excused herself to use the bathroom. She stood at Claire's sink and ran cold water over her wrists, the way she had since she was a teenager when she needed to come back to herself. She looked in the mirror, her own face, familiar and strange. The face of a woman who had just learned the full dimensions of what had been done to her. He did not choose her over me, Nora thought. He chose himself over both of us. We were never in competition. We were both just resources. She dried her hands on a white towel with a small embroidered flower at the corner. She looked at the embroidered flower for a moment. Someone had made that. Someone had chosen it. Claire, probably, or a gift from a family member. A small domestic object, full of care. She walked back out to the kitchen. Driving home from Garden View an hour later, the memories came. They did not come gently. The business trips, always 4 days, always with an explanation she had never questioned, because the explanations were always reasonable, and she had always been a reasonable woman. The way he never stayed at her apartment past Sunday. She had understood this as a quirk. His own space, his own rhythms. She had respected it. She had been careful not to crowd him. He was protecting his other life from his other life. The one time she had dropped by his apartment unannounced. He had met her at the door, not buzzed her up. Said there was a gas smell. They needed to take a walk. She had accepted this. She had thought nothing of it. There was no gas smell. The weekend his phone died, and he did not reach out for 48 hours. She had spent a Sunday afternoon on her couch, telling herself not to be the kind of woman who panicked over 2 days of silence. She had called herself irrational for feeling unsettled. She had practiced being calm. He had been counting on her practicing being calm. She pulled over on a side street 2 miles from her apartment. She sat with the engine running and the air conditioning on, and she let the memories move through her one at a time. She did not try to stop them or hurry them. She let each one arrive, revise itself in the new light, and pass. The signs were all there, she thought. I saw them. I filed them under something else. I was so careful to be understanding, so careful not to be demanding. He built his system on a reasonable woman. She drove past her old neighborhood without planning to, the one she grew up in, 2 streets over from her mother's house. She turned without deciding to and parked outside the small white house where she had lived until she was 18. Sylvia Callahan was in the garden, the way she always was on Tuesday mornings. She looked up when Nora got out of the car, and something in her face changed immediately. Mothers know. Come inside, Sylvia said. She did not ask what was wrong. She did not say you looked terrible, or are you all right. She said come inside, and she put the gardening gloves on the porch railing and held the door open. Nora sat at the kitchen table, where she had eaten breakfast for 16 years and done homework, and cried and laughed and argued and grown up. Sylvia made tea without being asked, set a cup in front of her daughter, sat across from her and waited. Nora told her everything. Sylvia listened without interrupting. Her face moved through things quietly. When Nora finished, she was silent for a long time. Through the window, a neighbor's children were shrieking happily over something in the yard. Ordinary Tuesday. The world moving as though nothing had happened. Your grandmother, Sylvia said finally, would have said that God protects fools and babies. I feel like a fool, Nora said. I know. You are confusing being deceived with being stupid. They are not the same thing. Sylvia reached across the table and covered Nora's hand. Being deceived requires a deceiver. The fault is his, not yours. I should have seen it. He was careful. Men like that are always careful. Sylvia's voice was even. The question is not what you should have seen. The question is what comes next. Through the window, one of the neighbor's children fell and started crying. The crying lasted about 15 seconds. Then it stopped. Then the shrieking started again. Nora looked at her mother's hand over hers. "I'm going to be okay," she said. She was testing the words to see if they were true. Sylvia squeezed her hand. "You are going to be better than okay. It will take time. But yes." The folder changed everything. Nora went back to Claire's house on Thursday. She brought Becca, who brought coffee, in a carrier, and the particular focused energy of a woman who has decided to be useful. Claire had cleaned since Tuesday. The house was ordered in the way a house gets ordered when someone needs to control something. Trish Odom was there when they arrived. Claire's older sister, 44 years old, compact and calm, with steady eyes and the quiet authority of a woman who had survived her own version of a hard year. She shook Nora's hand with both of hers and held it for a moment. "Thank you for coming to her," Trish said. "I did not know what else to do," Nora said. "Most people in your position would have run." They sat around Claire's kitchen table. The folder was open again. Becca looked at the spreadsheet for 30 seconds and said nothing, which for Becca meant she was working very hard at containing a strong reaction. Claire walked them through the numbers with the quiet precision of someone who has rehearsed the explanation enough times that the emotion has been temporarily sanded off it. The diversion had started 22 months ago. Small transfers at first, then larger ones as the second household costs grew. The engagement ring had cost $12,000. Claire's half of the joint account contribution in the relevant quarter was $9,000. Becca set down her coffee. The Portugal trip. 6 nights, business class on Nora's birthday, because he had said he wanted her birthday to be special. $11,000 total. The account records showed a withdrawal of that exact amount 4 days before the trip. "He took you to Portugal with her savings," Becca said. She was not speaking to anyone in particular. "Yes," said Claire. "And the ring." "Yes." Becca looked at Nora. Nora looked at the table. There was a particular kind of anger that arrived quietly, not a wave, a tide coming in. Slow and enormous and not stopping. Nora felt it begin at the edges of her chest, moving inward. "He bought me with her money," she thought. "He proposed to me with her ring. He took me to Portugal with the money that was supposed to be for their child." She excused herself to use the bathroom. The same white towel with the embroidered flower. She did not run the cold water this time. She just stood at the sink and breathed for a moment, looked at her own face. She was not going to cry. The crying had been for a different stage. She was past the crying stage now. She was in the anger stage. This was, she realized, much better. She walked back to the kitchen table. "I need to know everything," she said. "Whatever is in that folder. I need to understand all of it." Claire looked at her. Then she turned the next page. For the next 2 hours, they went through it together. Trish refilled the coffee, and Becca took notes on her phone, and Nora and Claire sat across from each other and dismantled Garrett Whitfield's double life with methodical thoroughness. By the end, the picture was complete. 4 years of marriage to Claire, 3 years of relationship with Nora, 2 years of financial diversion, 1 engagement, a baby due in 7 weeks, and 1 man who had believed he could manage all of it. He was counting on the women being too embarrassed to compare notes, Becca said. She said it almost to herself, but everyone heard it. Claire looked up. "He built his whole system on shame," Becca continued. "He assumed if you two ever found out about each other, you would both be too humiliated to talk to each other. He assumed the other woman and the wife would never be in the same room." The kitchen was very quiet. Nora looked at Claire. Claire looked at Nora. He had been wrong about that. At 3:47 in the afternoon, Nora's phone rang. A number she did not recognize. She let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, Becca's phone rang. Unknown number. Becca answered it because she answered everything. Is Nora Callahan with you? The voice on the other end was controlled and even. Tell her to stop what she is doing. Tell her she does not understand the full picture. Becca held the phone out flat and pressed speaker. Diane Whitfield's voice filled the kitchen. Nora is a sweet girl, Diane said. But she has no idea what she would be walking into, or out of. Claire, I am sorry, but this has gone far enough. Claire set down her coffee cup very carefully. Far enough for whom? Diane. A pause. For everyone. You came to my baby shower, Claire said. Her voice was very flat, like a road with nothing on either side. You sat in my living room and you ate the cake I made, and you gave me a gift for this baby, and you knew. You knew the entire time he was engaged to another woman, and you ate my cake, Diane said. Claire. Leave us alone, Claire said. Do not call this number again. She ended the call, set the phone face down on the table. 4 women sat in a kitchen with orange marigolds in the window boxes. She has known from the beginning, Claire said. His mother has known and enabled him from the beginning. No one spoke. A lawnmower started somewhere down the street. The refrigerator hummed. A clock somewhere in the house measured out the seconds. Trish reached across the table and covered Claire's hand. Nora looked at Becca. Becca looked back at her. Something had shifted in the room. It was not Hope yet. Hope was further away. But something had shifted. The particular shift that happens when something formless becomes something with edges, something you can pick up and work with. All right, Nora said. Her voice had changed. She could hear it herself. The qualifier was gone from it. The wondering and the softening. It was just a statement, a direction. We do this properly. We do this with lawyers and documentation, and we do not make a single move without a paper trail. She looked at Claire. Can you make copies of everything in that folder today? I already have copies, Claire said. In 3 places. Nora almost smiled. Of course you do. Douglas Mercer's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown with a view of the river and the particular silence of rooms where decisions had weight. He listened to Nora for 30 minutes without interruption. He had a yellow legal pad in front of him, and he made notes on it in a small, precise hand, and he did not react visibly to anything she said, which she found steadying. When she finished, he looked at his notes for a moment. Then he looked at her. There are several issues here, he said, and they interact with each other in ways that require careful sequencing. Tell me. Garrett Whitfield has committed bigamy. In this state, that is a criminal matter, as well as a civil one. Your engagement is legally void because he was never free to become engaged to you. Claire's marriage is the valid one. The financial diversion she has documented may constitute fraud, potentially wire fraud, given the electronic transfers. Nora sat with this. Criminal. She had been thinking in the language of heartbreak, betrayal. Wasted time, lost years. She had not been thinking in the language of felonies. What does that mean for Claire? She asked. It means she has significant legal standing. The marriage is valid. The financial misconduct occurred within the marriage. The baby establishes ongoing financial responsibility. Douglas set down his pen. It also means that both of you have leverage, and how you choose to use that leverage will determine what the outcome looks like. What are our options? He told her. She listened carefully. She asked 3 questions. He answered them without impatience. When she left his office 40 minutes later, she stood on the sidewalk in the early afternoon heat and called Owen. Her brother's phone rang twice. He answered the way he always did, with her name, no greeting. Nora. He committed a crime, she said. Against both of us. Against a pregnant woman. Owen's silence was 5 seconds long. Where is he right now? Owen said. I don't know. Owen, I'm not going to do anything. I know you're not. I'm telling you because you're my brother, and I needed someone to know. Another pause. What do you need from me? She thought about it, standing on the sidewalk, with the traffic noise around her and the afternoon sun on her face, and the clarity that had been arriving in small increments since Tuesday. Just be available, she said. That is all? Just be available. Always, he said. She walked back to her car. That evening, she did what she always did when she was overwhelmed. She reorganized. Not the kitchen drawers. She had done those last month. She started with the closet, took everything out, and spread it across the bed, and stood in the middle of the bedroom in the September evening light and sorted it. Keep, donate, throw out. At the very back of the closet, in a dry cleaning bag she had not opened since she picked it up, was the dress she had bought for the rehearsal dinner, navy silk. She had spent 3 weeks looking for it. She had tried on 14 dresses. She had brought Becca and Sylvia on separate trips, and then come back alone on a Saturday afternoon to make the final decision. She had loved it when she bought it, had hung it in the back of the closet to keep it safe until the week before. She held it in the dry cleaning bag, still in the plastic, still safe. She set it on the donate pile. Then she went back to the closet and kept sorting. At 11:47 in the evening, her phone rang. A number she did not recognize, but which turned out to belong to a man named Paul, who worked at Garrett's firm and who had apparently been carrying something for 3 years and could not carry it anymore. I need you to know I did not know about his wife, Paul said. His voice was tight, uncomfortable, the voice of a person making a call they had rehearsed. I knew there was a complicated situation. He told me it was an open arrangement. I believed him because it was easier to believe him. I am sorry. Why are you calling me now? Nora said. A pause. Because his wife went to HR this morning. She filed a financial misconduct report. It is going to be investigated. I wanted to apologize before everything became public. Nora sat down on the edge of the bed next to the donate pile. She went to HR, she said. This morning. First thing. Nora ended the call. She sat in the quiet of her bedroom, with the organized closet open in front of her, and the donated dress on the pile, and the keep items hung neatly in a row. She thought, Claire is not waiting. She is moving. Right now, on the same day, she is already moving. Something shifted in her chest. Something that was not quite hope, but lived next door to it. I am not alone in this, she thought. We are doing this together. Her buzzer sounded at 12:15 in the morning. She looked at the security camera feed on her phone. Garrett's face, slightly distorted by the wide-angle lens, looking up at the camera, knowing she could see him. Nora, he said through the intercom. His voice was different than the efficient voice behind the study door, different than the warm, easy voice she had known for 3 years. This voice was something else, something she had not heard before. Nora, please. You do not understand what you are doing. You do not understand what we have. I can explain everything if you would just let me explain. Please, Nora. She counted. He stayed on the intercom for 40 seconds. She turned the screen off. She went back to the closet and kept sorting until 2 in the morning, when everything was organized and labeled and in its right place, and the only sound in the apartment was the refrigerator hum and the distant sound of the city and her own breathing, steady and certain. I deserved better than this, she thought, plainly, without performance, just as a fact. I deserved better than this, and so did she. Tricia's house was in a different suburb, smaller, older, full of Tricia's things. Family photos crowded the hallway walls. A child's drawing was held to the refrigerator with 3 magnets. The furniture was mismatched in the way that means someone has lived there long enough to stop caring about matching. It felt like an honest house. They met there on a Friday evening. Claire had been staying with Trish since Wednesday. Nora arrived at 6 with nothing in her hands because she had started a sentence about bringing wine and then stopped because wine seemed wrong and flowers seemed wrong, and she had not been able to determine what was right. So she had come empty-handed. Trish opened the door and said, "I'm glad you came." They sat in the living room, Claire on the couch with a pillow behind her back, the way she had started sitting everywhere, and Nora in the armchair across from her. Trish disappeared into the kitchen and made noise there with purpose, giving them room. For the first 5 minutes, they did not speak. The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere in the house, a television was on low. Outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. Claire said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes," said Nora. "Did he tell you he loved you?" "Every day," Nora said. She looked at her hands. "Did he tell you?" "Every day." The room held this for a moment. "I keep going back through them," Claire said. Her voice was careful, the way you carry something fragile. All the times he said it. "I keep trying to figure out which ones were real and which ones were performance. I keep trying to separate them out." She paused. "And then I realized I cannot. I have to let the whole thing go, all of it, even the parts that felt real, because I cannot know which parts were." "He contaminated them," Nora said. "That is the worst part. You cannot keep the good memories. He poisoned every single one of them just by being who he actually was." Claire looked at her. "Yes," she said. "That is exactly it." Outside, the dog barked again. Once, then silence. They sat with the silence for a moment. It was not a comfortable silence, but it was an honest one. It had weight and shape. It was the silence of 2 people who were not going to pretend things were anything other than what they were. Nora's phone buzzed. She looked at it and turned it face down. Garrett, the 6th call today. She had not answered any of them. Claire's phone buzzed at the same moment. She glanced at it, blocked the number, then turned the phone face down. They looked at each other. For a moment, something almost like recognition passed between them. The same gesture, the same hands, the same man's name lighting up their screens at the same moment. "How long?" Nora said. "Before it stops feeling like this?" Claire shook her head slowly. "I don't know. I keep thinking I'm getting somewhere, and then I smell something, or hear a song, and it's like—" She stopped. Her hand went to her stomach, the automatic gesture. "Like falling," Nora said. "Like falling," Claire agreed. They were quiet again. At 7:10, Claire excused herself to the bathroom. She did not come back for 12 minutes. Trish went after her at 8 minutes, slipping out of the kitchen without a word. Nora sat in the living room and listened to the muffled sound of a woman falling apart on the other side of a wall. She did not get up. She did not go to the door. She just sat with the sound of it, because sometimes the right thing to do with another person's grief is simply not look away from it. When Claire came back, her eyes were red. She sat differently, smaller. The composure she had been holding was still there, but thinner now. "I'm sorry," Claire said. "Don't," said Nora. "I've been trying to hold it together." "Claire, do not apologize. Not in this room. Not to me." Claire looked at her. Nora said, "I sat in a bathtub with my clothes on for 2 hours the night I found out. I ran the water until it turned cold, and I just sat there with my jeans soaked and the water going cold, and I could not make myself get out." Claire stared at her. Then something moved through her face. Not a smile. something softer and more complicated than a smile. I ate an entire sleeve of crackers in my car in a grocery store parking lot, Claire said. I cried so hard I couldn't see the steering wheel. I called him 17 times and hung up before it rang. I ironed every single piece of my maternity clothing at 2 in the morning. Every piece. Even the ones I don't like. Something opened in the room. Not laughter, not exactly, but in the same neighborhood as laughter. A recognition. A release. I reorganized my closet, Nora said. I alphabetized the spice rack, Claire said. I don't even cook. They looked at each other, and then, in the living room of Trish's honest house, in the middle of the hardest week of both their lives, Nora Callahan and Claire Whitfield laughed. It lasted about 10 seconds. It was not pure. It had grief inside it, and anger inside it, and exhaustion inside it. But it was real. It was completely real. It was the first real thing that had happened in days. 2 days later, the news broke at Garrett's firm. The HR investigation, which Claire had initiated with the financial misconduct report, had moved faster than expected. By Wednesday afternoon, the story was circulating in the industry. Garrett Whitfield, Senior Director, under investigation for financial misconduct. A journalist found Nora through LinkedIn. She forwarded the message directly to Douglas without reading past the first sentence. His professional life was cracking open. She thought, driving home from Trish's house, he was always managing Claire and managing me and managing his parents and managing the calendar and managing the story. Always managing. He forgot the one thing you cannot manage. 2 women who have stopped being ashamed. She said it aloud, in the car, to no one. To the highway and the evening light. I deserved better than this. So did she. We both deserved better than this. She said it again, louder. The words did not fix anything, but they were true. And true things, she was discovering, had a particular kind of weight. The good kind, the load-bearing kind. Garrett did not go quietly. He went to Owen first, which was his first tactical error. He appeared at Owen's apartment on a Thursday evening with a prepared speech and the expression of a man who had convinced himself that the right words in the right order could still fix this. Owen opened the door, listened to him for 90 seconds, said, "Call your lawyer," closed the door. He texted Nora immediately. "He's scared." Good. Garrett went to Sylvia's house next, which was his second tactical error and worse than the first. Sylvia opened the front door and listened to him for 60 seconds with the particular patient expression she reserved for things that required patience, and then she said, "Garrett, I am 61 years old, and I have been watching men like you charm women like my daughter for my entire adult life. Get off my porch before I call the police." She closed the door and called Nora and said, "He was here. He is desperate. Stay the course." His third move was Diane. Diane Whitfield arrived at Trish's house on a Friday morning without calling ahead. She stood on the front porch in pressed linen and controlled hair and the particular composure she had been perfecting for 63 years. Trish opened the door and did not step aside. "She does not want to speak to you," Trish said. Diane's voice was even. "What she wants and what is best for that child. You do not get to say the word child to me," Trish said. "You knew. You watched your son do this to my sister for 4 years. You came to her baby shower. Diane, you sat in her living room and you ate the cake she baked and you held up the little yellow onesie and said, 'Oh, how precious.' And you knew he was engaged to another woman and you ate her cake and you said how precious." Diane said nothing. "My sister almost had a breakdown this week. She is 7 months pregnant. She has not slept more than 3 hours at a stretch in 2 weeks. And you are standing on my porch in your linen blouse, talking about what is best. Trish's voice did not rise. It went in the opposite direction, quieter and more final. Leave. Do not come back to this house. She closed the door. She told Claire later, and Claire sat at the kitchen table and pressed both hands flat on the surface and breathed for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you." "You do not thank me for that," Trish said. "That was free." Meanwhile, Nora was at the grocery store. It was her first ordinary errand since everything. Tuesday evening, basket in hand, she had a list. Because she always had a list, and she was working through it with the specific focus of a person who is managing themselves carefully. Bread? Yes. Eggs? Yes. The coffee she liked? Yes. She turned into the cereal aisle. She was not thinking about anything in particular. She was looking at the rows of boxes in the ordinary way you look at things when you are just a person buying cereal on a Tuesday. And then she saw it. His brand. His specific flavor. The one he had been precise about since she had known him. She had always bought 2 boxes, a primary and a backup, because she had loved him and she had wanted his mornings to be good. She stood in front of the box and she stopped. The basket hung from her hand. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her. Somewhere further in the store, someone's cart had a squeaky wheel. She stood there for 4 minutes. She knew because she checked her phone afterward. She did not buy the cereal. She did not move. She just stood in front of the box and felt something move through her that was not anger and was not grief exactly. Something older and quieter than either of those things. Something like the first real understanding of loss. Not the sharp, fresh loss of betrayal, which has energy in it. The slower loss of ordinary things. The cereal, the backup box, the Tuesday mornings. A stock worker appeared beside her, young, slightly alarmed. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Nora said. "I'm absolutely fine." She abandoned her basket, walked out of the store without her groceries, got into her car in the parking garage, sat in the dark with the engine off. She did not cry. She sat in the dark and breathed and listened to the sound of her own breathing and let the moment be what it was. Not a performance, not a milestone, just a moment in a parking garage on a Tuesday where she understood something true. This is going to take a long time to be over, she thought, even after it is finished legally, even after the paperwork is done and the money is returned and his name is on a document that says what he did. It is going to take a long time in the ordinary world. The cereal aisle and the Tuesday evenings and the small accumulated habits of loving someone are going to take the longest to go. This was not despair. It felt important to know that. It was not despair. It was accuracy. And accuracy, she had decided, was the only thing she trusted now. She sat in the parking garage for 15 minutes. Then she started the engine, drove to a different store, bought her groceries, went home, made dinner for herself, ate it at the kitchen table, thought I just made dinner for myself and ate it at my own table, in my own kitchen, and I am going to be all right. She called Claire after dinner. They had started doing this, checking in. Brief calls, not about the legal process or the strategy or the folder. Just checking in. In. "How are you?" Nora said. "Tired," said Claire. "The baby is doing this thing at night where she moves constantly between 2 and 4 in the morning, like she knows something is happening and she is agitated about it. She probably does know something is happening. Babies know everything," Claire said. "That is what I have decided. They just cannot say it yet." Nora thought about this. A small person inside a person, aware of the turbulence, unable to speak it. She is going to be incredible, Nora said. She better be, said Claire. After all this, Douglas called with the settlement offer on a Thursday morning. Nora was at her desk at work, where she had been managing to be present and functional for the past 2 weeks through a combination of discipline and the particular usefulness of having something specific to do. He called her desk phone. She picked up. Garrett's attorney has been in touch, Douglas said. He wants to settle, privately. He is offering full repayment of the diverted funds plus a penalty amount in exchange for both you and Claire agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. And if we decline, then the bigamy charge proceeds, which in this state carries up to 5 years of potential incarceration. What is the penalty amount? Douglas told her. It was significant. More than she had expected. He is scared, Nora said. Extremely, Douglas said. There was the faintest suggestion of professional satisfaction in his voice. I need to talk to Claire before we respond. Of course. But there is one more element. He has agreed, in principle, to everything. But his attorney says he is resistant to one specific term. Which term? The written acknowledgement, a formal documented admission of the bigamy, signed and filed. Nora was quiet for a moment. The acknowledgement had been Claire's condition. Sandra Marsh, Claire's attorney, had insisted on it, not for the criminal record, for the permanent record, so that any woman who came after them and did her due diligence could find it, so that the truth had somewhere to live permanently. Tell Douglas that the acknowledgement is not negotiable, Nora said. I know, Douglas said. I wanted to make sure you agreed before I communicated it. If he does not sign the acknowledgement, we proceed criminally. Understood? She called Claire from the parking lot at lunchtime. He wants to settle, Nora said. Everything, including financial. But he is pushing back on the acknowledgement. A pause. Of course he is, Claire said. The money he can replace eventually. The acknowledgement is permanent. That is why it matters. Sandra's position? My position, Claire said firmly. Sandra articulated it, but it is mine. Then we hold. We hold, Claire agreed. They waited 4 days. Douglas called back on Monday with the answer. Nora was standing at her kitchen window when the call came. Outside, it had started to rain, the soft, steady September rain that made the streets look washed. She watched the rain on the glass and waited. He agreed, Douglas said. All terms, including the acknowledgement. She pressed her hand flat against the cool glass. She could feel her own heartbeat in her palm. All of it, she said. Not a question. All of it. The financial repayment, the penalty, legal costs for both parties, and the signed acknowledgement to be filed with the county recorder's office. The rain moved in slow lines down the window. She thought about Claire. 7 months pregnant, 3 weeks away from giving birth, building a life in her sister's upstairs apartment on a financial foundation that was about to be restored. She thought about the baby who moved between 2 and 4 in the morning. She thought about the folder on the kitchen table and the embroidered towel and the cereal aisle and the parked car in the dark of the parking garage. She thought, it is done. Not over, not healed, not fixed in the way that means nothing happened, but done in the way that means what was taken has been accounted for, and what was done has been admitted, and the truth has somewhere permanent to live. I deserved better, she said, quietly, not to Douglas, to herself, to the rain on the window, and I got it. Douglas, professionally, did not respond to this. I will draw up the final agreement, he said. You will need to review it and sign, then we are done. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you for being a prepared client, he said, which was the highest compliment Douglas Mercer knew how to give. She called Claire immediately. The phone rang 3 times, which was unusual. When Claire picked up, her voice was different, entirely different, compressed and concentrated, and lit from inside with something enormous. "I'm at the hospital," Claire said. "Do not worry. Everything is fine. I am fine." She just decided she did not want to wait any longer. Nora sat down on the kitchen floor. Same floor, same tile. "She," Nora said. "She," Claire confirmed. And her voice had changed so completely that it was almost a different person's voice. Everything that had been hard and guarded and careful and strategic in it for the past weeks was simply gone. "She is here. She is so small. She is so—" Claire stopped speaking. Through the phone, Nora heard it. Small, urgent, brand new. The sound of a person arriving in the world. She sat on her kitchen floor, with her back against the cabinets, and her knees pulled up, and the phone pressed against her ear, and she listened to that sound. The rain moved down the window. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. The world kept going, the way it always did. The way it did, even in the middle of the hardest things and the best things. She listened to the baby cry. The baby's name was Marin, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, born on a Wednesday evening in the first week of October, 3 weeks before she was expected, with a full head of dark hair and an expression, according to Trish, of someone who had arrived specifically to audit the situation. Nora sent flowers the next morning. She called the florist, the same one who had cursed Garrett in the sympathetic shorthand of a woman who had heard too many versions of this story. She said, "I need something for a woman who has been through something enormous and just had a baby. The most beautiful thing you have." The florist sent white dahlias and pale yellow roses and a card that said, in Nora's handwriting, "She is going to be extraordinary. So are you." She did not visit. Not yet. That would be too much, too fast, and Nora had become very precise about what was too much and what was the right amount and when. She signed the settlement agreement 11 days after Marin was born. Douglas walked her through each page. She read everything. She did not sign anything she had not fully understood. She initialed the page that contained the acknowledgement, which named Garrett Allen Whitfield, and described his actions with the unambiguous clarity of legal language. She signed the last page. Douglas said, "That is it." She put the pen down on his desk, looked at the signed document, thought about the woman who had sat on a kitchen floor with tulips in her hands and an engagement ring catching the light. She was still that woman, but she was also someone else now. Someone who had gone through a thing and come out the other side with her character intact, and something in her spine that had not been there before. 3 weeks after the signing, Nora did something she had not done in 3 years. She made plans that did not involve Garrett Whitfield's calendar. She opened a browser on a Tuesday evening and booked a flight to Edinburgh. 7 nights. A small hotel she had seen mentioned in an article 2 years ago and marked in her bookmarks and never acted on because there was always something else happening, always a reason to wait. Scotland. Cold and gray and full of stone and history, and not one single memory of him. She told Becca on Thursday. "You're going alone?" Becca said. "I was going to," Nora said. "I thought it would be good for me to do something alone." "That is a beautiful idea," Becca said. "Very independent, very brave." A pause. "I booked a seat on the same flight. You didn't." "I did, about 30 seconds after you told me you were going. Your row was full, so I'm 2 rows back." Nora laughed. "The full kind. The kind that came from deep in the chest without effort." "Becca," she said. "Yes." "Thank you. For all of it." "You would have done the same," Becca said. "You have done the same, actually, multiple times. Not the Edinburgh part. No, Becca admitted. The Edinburgh part was new. I got excited. On her last day at work, before the trip, she was walking down the hallway between the copy room and her office when a colleague stopped her. A woman she knew only slightly, married, always looked slightly overwhelmed in a manageable way. The woman grabbed her arm. I heard what happened to you, she said. I just want to say, I don't know how you did it. You handled the whole thing with so much grace. I don't think I could have. Nora stopped. She thought about the bathtub with her clothes on, the cereal aisle, the parking garage in the dark, the kitchen floor twice. You probably could, she said. You would be surprised what you are capable of when you have to be. The woman looked at her for a moment. Something moved through her eyes, then she squeezed Nora's arm and walked on. Nora stood in the hallway for a moment. She thought, I actually believe that. I am not saying it to be reassuring or diplomatic. I believe it because I have watched it happen. She walked back to her office. She had 4 things on her to-do list before the trip. She completed all 4 of them by 3 in the afternoon. She packed that evening, efficiently, 1 bag. She did not overthink it. Claire sent a photo at 9 that night. Maren Whitfield, 5 weeks old, on a yellow blanket in a patch of morning light from the nursery window of the upstairs apartment at Trish's house. Eyes squeezed shut, small fists curled, entirely asleep and entirely uninvested in the drama that had preceded her arrival by approximately 39 weeks. Nora stared at this photo for a long time. She saved it to her camera roll. Put it in a folder she labeled with the date. She typed back, "She's perfect." Claire replied, "She really is. She wakes me up at 3 in the morning, and I don't even mind." Nora put the phone down and finished packing. Edinburgh was gray and cool and full of stone. She loved it immediately. She and Becca walked everywhere for 7 days. They ate in small restaurants and drank in old pubs and climbed the Royal Mile in the rain and stood on Arthur's seat in the wind and said very little of substance for long stretches of time, which was the best kind of travel. On the 3rd night, in a pub where no one knew their names, Becca finally asked, "How are you, actually?" Nora turned her glass. The fire in the corner was doing what pub fires do, which is make everything feel more honest. "I'm not okay yet," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not going to say I'm fine, because I am not completely fine, but I'm something better than not okay." She paused. "There is a word I cannot quite find for it." "Getting there?" Becca offered. "Not quite. It is more like," she considered, when you have been carrying something heavy for so long that you stop noticing, and then someone takes it, and you feel your own arms again." Becca looked at her for a moment. "Yeah," she said. "I think that is actually what okay is. That is the real version." Nora looked at the fire. He thought he was choosing, she thought. He thought he was in control. 2 women, 2 lives, 2 futures running parallel on a schedule he managed. But he was not choosing. He was avoiding honesty and commitment and the full weight of being a real person to someone. And the thing about avoidance is that eventually, everything you are running from catches up and arrives at the same moment. I thought I had been robbed, she thought. I thought I lost 3 years. But what I lost was a man who was never fully present in my life. What I got back is the space he was taking up. It turned out to be a significant amount of space. She thought about what she was going to do with it. She did not have a complete answer yet, but she had ideas. The ceramics class she had signed up for on a Thursday evening, starting next month. The trip to the West Coast she had been thinking about for years. The kitchen she was going to repaint in a color she had loved for 2 years and not acted on because Garrett had said it was too dark. It was going to be a deep teal. She had the paint chip in her bag. She looked at Becca. "I think I'm going to be good," she said. "Not right away, but eventually. I think I am going to be really good." "You are already," Becca said. 6 months later. The legal proceedings were entirely complete. The acknowledgement was filed in the county recorder's office, where documents live permanently, available to anyone who looks. The money had been transferred, verified, and confirmed by both attorneys. Douglas had sent a final letter that said, in his precise, understated way, "This matter is now fully resolved." It had been among the most satisfying letters he had written in 22 years of practice, though he did not include that in the letter. Garrett Whitfield's professional life had not recovered. The HR investigation at his firm had resulted in his departure, which the industry had noticed in the specific way that industries notice these things, quietly and permanently. His name, attached to those search terms, appeared in certain results in ways that could not be unmade. His mother had sent Claire a letter. 4 paragraphs, controlled language, a version of apology that protected itself on every side. Claire read it once, put it in a drawer in the nightstand, and closed the drawer. Perhaps she would respond someday. Perhaps she would not. She had decided that she did not owe that decision to a timeline. Maren Whitfield was 5 months old. She had opinions, about light specifically. She liked the morning light from the east-facing window in the nursery, and would indicate her preference for this light with a small sound that Trish described as a very tiny editorial comment. She had opinions about being held, particularly about being held facing outward versus inward, and would make her preference clear immediately. She had strong opinions about a particular rattle that had originally belonged to Trish's youngest child, and which that child had been attempting to reclaim with 0 success. Claire was tired, in the bone-deep, accepting way of new mothers. She was also, and she tracked this carefully because she was a careful person, happier than she had been a year ago. Not in spite of what had happened, she would not let the narrative be that simple. More accurately, on the other side of it, through the middle of it, out the other side, into something that was entirely her own. She had gone back to work part-time. The firm had held her position. She worked from the upstairs apartment in the mornings when Maren slept, with a cup of coffee and the east-facing window and the sound of Trish's house below her. It was, she thought, a very specific kind of peace, the kind that only exists because something else has ended. Nora met her for coffee on a Saturday in March. They did this occasionally now, this strange friendship that could not have existed in any other version of their lives. They met at a coffee place that was neither of their neighborhoods, which felt right, neutral ground that became their ground. Claire arrived with Maren in the carrier. The solid, warm weight of her pressed against Claire's chest, completely asleep in the particular way of babies in carriers who trust their mother's heartbeat entirely. They ordered coffee. They sat by the window. They talked about ordinary things for a few minutes. Work, the upstairs apartment, Trish's youngest's ongoing campaign to reclaim the rattle. Then Nora asked, "How are you doing?" "Actually." Claire considered it. She looked out the window. A man was walking a very old dog down the sidewalk, with the patience of someone who has accepted a slow pace as the correct pace. "I am building something," Claire said. "I do not know exactly what it is yet. I do not have a complete picture, but the materials are mine, all of them, the work, the apartment, Maren, the choices I make every morning." She paused. "For the first time in 4 years, nothing I am building has a hidden foundation. It is all the way down mine." Nora looked at her. "That is the thing," Nora said. "Isn't it? He gave us both that. We did not ask for it, but we have it. Marin stirred slightly in the carrier, made a small sound, resettled. Claire looked down at her, the automatic look. The one Nora had noticed every time she had seen them together. The look that contained everything. She has no idea, Claire said, about any of it. Good, said Nora. She will someday. Someday, Nora agreed. But not now. Right now she just gets morning light and the rattle and you. Claire smiled. The real one. Not the managed one she wore when things were hard. The real one. Nora walked home. From the coffee shop, through the neighborhood, in the early spring afternoon. The kind of March day where the temperature could not quite commit, but the light was trying. Thin and bright and full of the specific hopefulness of early spring, which has always been less about warmth and more about the angle of the light. She stopped at a flower stall. She needed flowers for the kitchen. She had made a ceramic piece last week at the Thursday evening class, a wide low bowl in a dark glaze, and she had put it on the kitchen table and decided it needed flowers in it. She had been thinking about what kind. She looked at the buckets along the front of the stall. Roses, dahlias, anemones, ranunculus, and then, in the bucket at the end, yellow tulips. She picked them up. She stood there with the yellow tulips in her hand, and she felt the specific memory rise, the hallway, the floorboard, the voice behind the closed door, the tulips falling one at a time onto the dark wood floor. She stood with it. She let it be there. And then she paid for the tulips. They were just flowers. They had always been just flowers. She was not going to let him have tulips. She was not going to let him have yellow or spring or a flower stall on a Saturday afternoon. She was not going to let him have that. She carried them home. She put them in the ceramic bowl on the kitchen table, the one she had made with her own hands on a Thursday evening, in a studio where the light was good, and the instructor was patient, and the clay did what she told it to do eventually, after enough tries. The tulips were yellow against the dark glaze. She looked at them. She thought about the kitchen floor, both times she had sat on it, the ring on the tile, the phone against her ear in the dark, listening to a baby cry. She thought about the bathtub and the parking garage and the cereal aisle and the rehearsal dinner dress going to the donate pile, and Douglas's careful voice on the phone saying, he agreed, all of it. She thought about Becca 2 rows back on the plane and the pub in Edinburgh and what okay actually is. She made coffee. Sat down at the table. The morning light was coming through the east-facing window the way it always had, the way it had every morning since she moved in, the way it would continue to do regardless of what happened in the rooms where it fell. The paint chip for the kitchen was still in the junk drawer. Deep teal. She had bought the actual paint 2 weeks ago. It was sitting in her closet waiting. She was going to do it next weekend. She had already watched 4 videos on how to tape and cut properly. She looked at the tulips in the bowl she had made. Ready, she thought. Not for anything specific. Not for a plan or a timeline or a next chapter. Just ready. The way a room is ready after it has been properly aired out. Lighter, more itself. Outside, the city was doing what it always did on a Saturday morning. The sounds of it came through the window. Traffic and voices and a dog and somewhere, someone's music. The ordinary noise of ordinary life being lived by people who were not thinking about her at all, which was exactly right. Somewhere 40 miles east, in an upstairs apartment with good morning light, Marin Whitfield was 5 months old and entirely unaware that she had been born at the precise intersection of 2 women's courage. She did not know about the folder, or the attorney, or the acknowledgement filed in the county recorder's office. She did not know about Edinburgh, or the cereal aisle, or the parking garage, or the bathtub, or the yellow tulips. She knew morning light. She knew her mother's heartbeat. She knew the rattle. She knew being held. This was enough to know. For now. Somewhere in the city, Garrett Whitfield was making his next calculations. He was a man who had always been making calculations. It was the only way he knew how to live. He would make them again with someone else, in some new arrangement. This was almost certainly true, but there was a document now, in the county recorder's office, available to anyone who looked. He had signed it himself. And somewhere on a Thursday evening, Nora Callahan had her hands in clay, at a table in a studio with good light, making something she did not have a name for yet. Not a bowl. She had made the bowl, not a cup. She had made two of those, something new, something she could not see the shape of until her hands found it. The instructor came by and looked at the clay on the wheel and said, "What is it going to be?" Nora considered this. "I don't know yet," she said. "That's usually when the best things happen," the instructor said. She went back to her table. Nora put her hands back into the clay and turned the wheel and let her hands find what they were looking for. The light in the studio was exactly right. She was not thinking about any of it. She was just making something, and it was enough. It was completely enough. Closing disclaimer. The story you have just heard was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team, crafted with intention to bring you narratives that reflect real emotional truths, meaningful lessons, and the quiet strength that lives inside every difficult chapter. Thank you for being here.